And good afternoon, producer Susan. Is it spring in Pennsylvania yet?
Well, Jersey Joe, I had to brush the snow off my car this morning before going to work.
Snow in April?
I had to brush the snow off my car this morning.
Right. And April 15th is what, next Monday or Tuesday? You got your taxes all done?
My taxes are done, my refund, I already got my refund.
Well, good for you. I've got to file for an extension. I can never file on time because I don't get the K-1s from some of the things I'm involved in. So anyway, you know, I this morning, I take about an hour and a half to get ready for this 30-minute podcast, and then stuff happens during the day. I had to make some last minute changes uh, to the podcast today, and that's going to be one of the first things we talk about. But anyways, let me put this in perspective. So we're recording this on April 8th, which is a Tuesday. It's the situation with Jersey Joe. And it's news. We call it the news in perspective you won't hear in TV. And I guarantee you, there's a bunch of stuff we're going to talk about today that you've never heard on TV. And you want to ask yourself why you haven't heard about it. And of course, we're going to talk about tariffs, the stock market, and Doge. Um, Once again, last week our quote of the week is from economist Thomas Sowell. Well, we have another one, and it's this time it's his observation and what you can observe almost daily as proof of the failure of our educational system, and it's something I encounter on an almost daily basis. This is one of the things that I had to add in at the last minute, and it's shocking. Now we all know about Luigi Mangione and the big fan club he has and the GoFundMe page for
Yes,
Luigi. And a shocking
sadly.
study that came out yesterday will tell you what percentage of Americans think it would be okay if somebody assassinated either Donald Trump and or Elon Musk. Yeah, you probably did you hear about the study?
I didn't, but I
Well, I
don't
think
really know under what circumstances is it okay to kill somebody else unless it's in
well,
self-defense.
I mean, there's always some whack jobs who think, yeah, I mean, there've already been two people. I think there's actually been three assassination attempts of which two people actually, had guns in their hands. There's always you always consider some fringe, 1 or 2% of the population, but this study was astounding. We'll tell you about what percentage of the population would be okay if somebody assassinated Trump or Musk. Um, I think you and I have talked about this. Stupidest thing I've heard all week. We'll tell you about a ridiculous lawsuit that was brought against the school district over the name used by their school district sports teams, and I'm sure you're familiar with that
Yeah.
one.
Hmm.
In the runner-up to our stupidest thing I've heard all week, we'll tell you what some criminal acts what criminal acts some liberals are repeatedly practicing to, in their mind, get back at Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. This is just insane. We've got two dumb criminal stories. We'll tell you about that, and we'll let you decide which of these two was the stupidest criminal of the week. You remember Karim Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary?
Yes.
Well, we'll play a clip of her telling the press about some new tariffs that President Biden was going to put on all Chinese goods, and why the press was seemed to be okay with Biden doing it, but gets their uh, their underwear twisted, their knickers twisted when Trump does the same thing. In another way back segment, we'll play a clip from 2011 of President Obama announcing the creation of an initiative uh, to focus on identifying and eliminating fraud, waste, and abuse, and who he named to head up that initiative. You probably don't remember that, do you? When Obama said we're
I
going to,
don't.
okay.
Uh-uh.
And then in yet another way back segment, we'll play a clip from 1996, back when Chuck Schumer was just a congressman, a junior congressman, not a senator, and he's arguing why we need tougher identity laws and restrictions on who could be issued a Social Security number. Remember last week we talked about 5.5 million non-citizens have been issued Social Security numbers, and of course we have
Yes.
the Democrat uproar over voter ID laws. Well, here's 1996, which is 25 and 4, 29 years ago, Congressman Chuck Schumer arguing for tougher identity laws. Um, you ever heard of a guy named Harry Sisson? He's supposed to be an political influencer.
No, I don't think I've heard his name before.
Well, he's a big Democrat, big Biden-Harris supporter. Supposedly he goes by, he's an influencer. Well, we got two quotes from him, and the first one didn't age well. So we'll play that. And if we have time, we'll ask the question, if tariffs are so bad for a country's economy, then why do 170 other countries around the world impose tariffs on the importation of goods, including cars made in America? I mean, if tariffs are bad, then why do 170 other countries put tariffs on
Yeah.
American-made goods? And last but not least, for a change, our taxpayer relief shot does not come to us from Texas. It comes to us from Miami, where two armed thugs attempt to rob a Domino's pizza delivery driver who happens to also be armed. So that's a plate full of stuff. Anyway, here, quote of the week, Economist Thomas Sowell, and I encounter this every single day. If you go on any of these liberal websites and you make a factual argument, or if you dare go on something, say that's not true, here are the facts. And here's his observation about the state of American education. And this is a quote. One of the painful signs of years of dumbed down education is how many people are unable to make a coherent argument. They can vent their emotions, question other people's motives, make bold assertions, and repeat slogans, anything except reason. What do you think
Hmm.
about that?
Yep. Very true.
There's a quote that's been frequently attributed to Socrates that says, "When the debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the
Yep.
loser."
Absolutely. And this
And
is why I don't argue with people who ate paste as a child.
and I'll go on there and somebody will make a statement and I'll say that's not true. Here's the data from the IRS, or here's the data from the US Treasury, or here's the Bureau and the first thing out of their mouth, rather than come back with a fact-based rebuttal, the first thing out of their mouth, they start calling me, you're an a-hole, you're an idiot, you're a moron. uh, you know, I don't know if they're unable to back up what they said or. And so again, here's Thomas Sowell's quote. One of the painful signs of years of dumbed down education is how many people are unable to make a coherent argument. They can
Hmm.
vent their emotions, question other people's motives, make bold assertions, repeat slogans, anything except reason.
Hmm.
By the way, I can't tell you how many times I've been called a Russian asset. All right. All right. So here's the thing I had to throw in at the last minute um, because I just read about this afternoon. Have you heard of something called the assassination culture?
Yeah, and I think we saw this during Luigi Mangione,
Right.
wanting people feel that he was justified in killing the CEO of
The
what was it,
United
United
Healthcare.
Healthcare?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
NCRI, which is a highly respected research, public opinion polling, they conducted a national representative survey of more than 1,200 U.S. adults across, all income brackets, and this is weighted to reflect national census demographics. And here were the findings, and this is a quote from the story. You want to guess what percentage of the American people would be okay with somebody assassinating Trump or Musk? You want to take a wild guess?
Sadly, I feel like it's pretty high. I feel like it's probably like close to 50%, unfortunately.
38%, more than one in
Yeah.
three.
Yeah.
38% of respondents said it would be at least somewhat justified to murder Donald Trump, and 31 said the same about Elon Musk. And when counting only left-leaning respondents, justification for killing Trump rose to 55%,
So
and
I
killing
was
Musk
close.
rose to 48%. What is the antithesis of democracy? Everybody's talking about we need to save our democracy. Isn't assassination the antithesis of democracy?
Yeah, that's like the communist thing. If you don't agree with what I say, I'm gonna kill you. That's like communism.
So much for all the liberals who say we need to save our democracy. Well, to save our democracy, 55% say it would be okay to kill Trump, and 48% be okay
I
to.
can't believe that I was actually right when I said
Yeah.
50%. It's
Well,
just
I was stunned. I would have thought 8%, 12%. And when I said, and 38% is obviously a blended average of, all independents, conservatives,
there is no reason. I cannot think of one single valid reason for wanting to kill somebody simply because you disagree with them.
with their politics or their policies.
Yeah.
We have a mechanism. We have elections. We have impeachment. You can vote out. You can in another 18 months you can change out all of the people in the House, all the congressmen in the House of
Mhm.
Representatives,
Yep.
1/3 of the senators. So we have a political mechanism. We have a Supreme Court to block a president if he doesn't, if he tries to violate the Constitution.
Yeah.
Congress can impeach a president. But no, they think killing, we should go right to murdering the guy because they don't like what he's doing and how he's doing it. All right. So here's the stupidest thing I've heard all week, and I know you heard about this. Out on Long Island, there's a school district, and they use the name of their sports teams are the Spartans. Now we all know who the Spartans were. They were the Greek warriors who fought
Yeah.
off the Persians. I think there's a couple of been movies made, what the 100 or something,
Mhm.
where
Yep.
100 Spartans held off, 5,000 Persians. Well, this group of parents and activists out in Long Island is suing the schools by claiming that it's racist because it is a symbol of the supremacy of white Greek warriors. Now, how stupid is that?
I never thought of what a Spartan actually stands for, but I mean, I think one of the most famous Spartans is Michigan State.
Michigan State, right? You got the Michigan State, college university system. They're the Spartans. Well,
Yeah.
if this suit in Long Island succeeds, I'm just wondering how long before somebody in Michigan
Yeah, I
tries
mean,
to.
and this started, a few years back, I don't know, maybe five or so, maybe a little bit longer, about all of these schools, these high schools having Indian names, the Chiefs or the Indian, all,
The
and we
Reds,
saw it
yeah,
with
the Red Sox and the Chiefs,
Redskins,
right? Yeah, the
National
Warriors. Yeah.
Washington Redskins. Yeah, there was this huge national movement between schools and elementary schools, high schools, and even NFL teams to get rid of any sort of like reference to the Cherokees or the Indians or the Redskins. And
Well,
now I guess, but now I get now they moved on to the Spartans.
we'll follow up and we'll tell you if this lawsuit makes it to court, how that one turns out. But I mean, would you agree that's the stupidest thing I've heard of? That's the
I,
stupidest
I'm
lawsuit.
curious to see how this unfolds, to see because this does have that would then set precedents for somebody to go after a school like Michigan State, which is a
Yeah.
very prominent school.
Well, time will
You know,
tell. All right. You want to hear our runner-up to the
what's the
stupidest
runner up?
thing? All right. Now we all know who Jeff Bezos is, right? He
Yeah,
founded.
he's the founder and CEO or
No, no, he founded Amazon, but he stepped down as CEO a couple of, he's no longer
okay,
he's not an officer of Amazon. He's simply a minority shareholder. He is not the owner
okay.
of Amazon. He's not the CEO. And by the way, a couple of years ago, Amazon bought Whole Foods, right?
Yes.
Whole
Yep.
Foods is owned by Amazon, and they
Mhm.
use, if you order something food on Amazon, it gets fulfilled by Whole Foods. Well, if you thought liberals only committed destructive and illegal acts to spite Elon Musk, then you missed the stories about liberals shoplifting specifically from Whole Foods, not out of need, but simply to spite Jeff Bezos,
Mhm.
uh, who, by the way, and there's a link to the article. The woman who wrote this incorrectly identifies Bezos as the CEO of Amazon, which he is not no longer. He was at one time. But
Yeah.
they think they're, quote, getting back at Jeff Bezos by intentionally shoplifting from Whole Foods. Now, if you're a liberal, and sooner or later you're going to get caught. So is it worth having a misdemeanor uh, arrest on your record
Well,
because
I
you
mean,
shop
this is the equivalent of what's been going on nationally over the last couple of weeks with people,
keying Teslas and right
yeah,
blocking
vandalizing, burning Teslas, private that belong to private citizens, to your neighbor. I want to
Yep.
go burn my neighbor's Tesla simply because I don't like Elon Musk. I mean, this is absurd.
Well, when Budweiser hired that trans woman to be their spokesperson, I went out and I burned down a Budweiser truck. You know I did that.
Like, yeah, that's the other, like, uh, because of uh, because of that, like you're gonna do all this damage to Budweiser. I mean, none of this makes sense. You gotta, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say sometimes with these people
Well,
and
that
their
was my runner.
actions.
That's my runner-up. Unless you think that should be the stupidest thing. What do you think? Should it be the Spartan
Yeah, I
lawsuit?
think that yeah, I think the Jeff Bezos and the whole shoplifting from like, do these people actually think like what their actions are gonna do?
Yeah. If anything, it's going to increase the price of food to other shoppers because stores have to make
Exactly.
up. They call that shrinkage in the trade, right? They call it
Yeah.
shrinkage. And the higher the shrinkage in the store, the more they have to increase their prices to the other
Yeah, I mean, it
grocery.
just hurts them doing all this. Any shoplifting raises prices for the people who are the law-abiding citizens who actually pay for
Yeah.
this stuff.
So, and do you think it's going to hurt Jeff Bezos one
No,
iota?
not at all. literally a multi-billionaire with a
Yeah.
B.
I
Like
think
he
he's
didn't
around net
care.
worth around $150 billion.
Yeah.
No, it's not
And
going to
same
hurt
thing
me.
with Tesla and Elon. Like Elon is literally a multi-billionaire with a B. Like burning your neighbor's Tesla doesn't impact Elon.
That's right. All right. Um, I'm trying to squeeze this along. I got with so much. All right, now we got two stupid criminals, and you need to pick the weather. The first one is a guy went to a Tesla dealership, and he tells the salesman that he wants to drive a Tesla Cybertruck. You know that big ugly truck that looks
Yeah,
like.
I did hear this one. Yeah.
Anyway, so the guy gives the salesman a copy of his real driver's license. The salesman makes a copy of it. He has the guy sign the test drive agreement that says you're responsible for any damage, and you need to bring it back in 30 minutes or less. So he hands the guy the key fob, and the guy drives off and never returns. Well, the next day, the dealership, using the onboard embedded GPS system that's standard in all Tesla trucks, locates the Cybertruck in a Home Depot parking lot, and they send a tow truck to get it, and they got a spare key fob, and they have the tow truck bring it back to the dealership. Well, a few hours later, the thief, remember, and they have his real driver's license, shows up at
Mhm.
the dealership demanding that they return his personal property that he had left in the truck. Well, the dealership stalls him, saying, "Well, they have to go out and look for it." It's, and they call the police and they stall the guy by telling him they need to be looking for his stuff. And the police arrive and arrest him. And after they arrest him, they also find that he has five stolen credit cards in his pocket. So how stupid do you have to be to
Yeah.
steal a truck from a Tesla dealership, and then go back after they repossess it and ask for your stuff back? How stupid do you
Yeah,
have to be?
using your real ID. Yeah.
All right. Now here's number two. A bunch of women wanted to have a birthday celebration for one of their friends. So they used and why the restaurant didn't take reservations, they have a wait list and they use their real name to sign up on the restaurant's online wait list system. They ran up a $260 dinner bill, and that's without tip. And then they skipped out on the bill and then bragged about it online, including tagging the name of the restaurant where they skipped from. So of course the restaurant immediately saw this and said to the police, here's the people that skipped out on our dinner bill, and they were arrested. So how stupid do you have to be to use your real name to make the reservation, skip
Yeah.
out on a $260 bill, and then brag about it online, tagging the name of the restaurant that you skipped out on? How stupid do you have to
And
be?
was it really worth $260?
Well,
I mean, $260? I mean, come on.
so who's this between those two, the guy that stole the Tesla truck and came back for his personal property, or the
Oh man,
women who
yeah, I think the guy with the Tesla, I mean, you hear about these dine and dash people all the time, but and I never understood like that's, in the grand scheme of things, like $200, is that really worth it?
Yeah. Yeah. So the
Yeah,
woman, so anyway,
I'm
$260.
gonna go with the Tesla truck.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go back about a year to, we all remember Karim Jean-Pierre, right? And
Yes.
so everybody's all upset about Trump's putting tariffs on Chinese goods, and they're always going to wreck the economy. Well, here's Karim Jean-Pierre bragging about Biden just putting some tariffs on Chinese goods.
Representative to increase tariffs under Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 on $18 billion of imports from China.
18 billion. He's going to put tariffs on $18 billion worth of imports from China.
This action will protect American workers and businesses from China's unfair trade practices. As you heard, the president often say American workers and businesses can outcompete anyone. The president directed his trade representative.
All right. So what? So when Biden did it, it was something to be celebrated. When Trump does it, it's something to be vilified. Um, so let's move on.
I think when people are losing sight of what these tariffs and everything, and unfortunately none of this happens overnight, and I think you were going to get into a little bit more of this, bringing back American made, and wanting to encourage people to come back to America, the manufacturers, but these factories, unfortunately, you just can't this doesn't happen overnight. It does take time.
No, but what can happen overnight and is already starting to happen overnight is, um, these foreign countries, as I mentioned at the beginning, 170 other countries tariff American
Yeah.
products.
Yes.
This is basically okay. You want to tariff us, we're going to tariff you. And already we're seeing Israel, Mexico, Canada, that you have countries. I think there are 50 countries have indicated they would like to have a discussion on adjusting their tariffs.
Yeah.
That is happening over
Yeah,
there.
and that's good. That's a good outcome. But I think in the bigger picture, the long haul, like this would be, bringing American jobs back to America.
Yep. Yeah.
That is good in the long haul. And yeah, it's going to hurt for the short term.
Yeah. Short-term pain for long-term gain. So that's where
Yeah.
we are. All right. So let's go in the Wayback Machine back to 2011, which was 14 years ago. And here's President Obama saying, he doesn't call it a Doge team, but he says we're starting an initiative to identify waste, fraud, and abuse in government spending. And wait till you hear who he puts in charge of it. Here we go.
Knows that getting rid of the deficit will require some tough decisions. And that includes cutting back on billions of dollars in programs that a lot of people care about. But what should be easy is getting rid of the pointless waste and stupid spending that doesn't benefit anybody. Waste we should be getting rid of, even if we didn't have a deficit.
Like transgender comic books in Peru, right?
Yeah.
Sure, some of these cuts aren't that big, but no amount of waste is acceptable. Not when it's your money. Not at a time when so many Americans are already cutting back. Just as families are living within their means, government should too. Did you know the federal government pays for a website devoted to a folk music ensemble made up of forest rangers? They're called the Fiddlin' Foresters. I'll put their music on my iPod, but I'm not paying for their website. And there are hundreds of similar sites that we should consolidate or just get rid of. By the way, you're not only paying for websites no one needs, you're paying for thousands of buildings all across the country no one uses. For the last decade, the government's owned a massive and completely empty warehouse in the middle of Brooklyn, for example. Now, the government hadn't been able to sell this building and others like it because of red tape and Washington politics that held things up for years. But we're finally cutting through all that and plan to get rid of these buildings in the months ahead. We need to step up our game. We need to go after every dime. We need to make government work for you. That's why, starting today, I've asked the Vice President to lead a renewed effort to hunt down misspent tax dollars in every agency and department of this government.
And in 2011, who was the Vice President of the United States?
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
We're calling it the Campaign to Cut Waste. And I know Joe's the right man to lead it because nobody messes with Joe.
There's a new standard.
All right, I'm going to cut the rest of it. So there's
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much he ended up cutting ultimately, but like, I mean, Trump's really cutting everything across the board.
right. But everybody thought that everybody's applauding Obama when he did. We're going to do this, and we're going to put
Yeah.
Biden in charge of it. Yeah, club. Everybody's standing ovation, and Trump and of course Biden. Almost nothing came out of that initiative, and now but Trump's been doing it for a year, and everybody's having a heart attack.
I mean, but basically Trump is doing what Joe should have done,
right,
as directed by Obama.
right. And one more. We're going to go to Junior Congressman Chuck Schumer before he was a senator, talking about the need for stronger identification laws. And here we go.
Salute him for his work on this, rise in support of the amendment. First of all, Social Security card is used from one end of America to the other as an identification card right now. Who are we kidding? If you want to pass a law and says it shouldn't be, I would ask the chairman and the distinguished minority member of the Social Security committee to pass that law. But let's admit the truth. Everywhere people go, they're asked for a Social Security card. In fact, one way to prove you're a bona fide person who can have a job is to ask for a driver's license and a Social Security card. This is an anti-fraud amendment. Over where we go, people say, well, why can't you stop illegal immigrants or others from coming here? And the number one answer we give our constituents is when they come here, they can get jobs, get benefits against the law because of fraud. And here, the gentleman from Florida has put together the most effective anti-fraud measure we can find without it changing the actions of the government one bit. And we find all this opposition. Ladies and gentlemen of this chamber, what I worry about is that this bill, which started out with good intentions, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, is going to end up being the same kind of thing that the public gets angry with us on. We say we're doing something, and we do nothing.
And by the way, he's talking primarily to his fellow Democrats. They are the ones who are objecting because the bill was introduced by a Republican congressman from Florida. So there's Chuck Schumer agreeing with Republicans about we need to crack down on identity fraud. Um, anyway, so that's Chuck Schumer from 1996. How much time we got left?
Oh, you about 10 minutes.
Good. All right. So I don't have to rush then. So here we go. Anyway, we talked about this guy Harry Sisson. He presents himself as an influencer. So here's his quote from um, uh, let's start with his most recent quote from March 16th. He says, and this is a quote, "The White House is ignoring federal courts and just doing whatever they want. Trump wants to be a king, and MAGA will stand by and clap along like good little servants. We have a constitutional crisis. It's here." So that was 2 weeks ago. You want to hear what he said 2 years ago when Biden was president?
What do you say?
You think he said the same thing?
No.
And here's what he said about Biden. He said, "It's amazing. President Biden just announced that he will invoke the Higher Education Act to bypass the conservative majority on, wait for it, the Supreme Court and their terrible ruling. He's fighting for a student debt relief and won't give up the battle." So he's applauding, 2 years ago, he's applauding President Biden for ignoring a Supreme Court ruling. And he's, and giving him kudos. He's fighting for student debt relief. Um, he's going to invoke this act to bypass the Supreme Court, the majority ruling of the Supreme Court. And yet, and that was going after Trump for doing exactly what he applauded Biden doing. So is this guy's middle name Hypocrisy? Can you look that up for me? Harry,
Yeah.
is it Harry Hypocrisy Sisson? By the way, his picture and this quote will be in the show notes if you have time to post them.
Yep.
As will all of those video clips that we just talked about. And by the way, I mentioned this at the beginning, but here's a question. If you know a Democrat politician or you know a liberal, just ask them this question, because I've asked and nobody can answer. If tariffs are supposed to be so bad for a country's economy, then why do 170 countries around the world impose tariffs on the importation of goods and food products
Question.
like soybeans, wheat, beef, and pork from the United States? If they're so bad, why do so many countries do it?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard anybody even try to answer that question?
Nope. I don't. I mean, nobody likes tariffs. I mean, obviously, but yeah, 170 countries out there have them.
Yeah, and they don't tariff each other nobody in the EU, like Germany doesn't tariff French products, and Spain doesn't tariff Italian products, and Belgium doesn't tariff Portugal, but they all tariff US products. So that's always a question. I'd love to have a Democrat politician in the room and say,
I always think it was weird too, though, that we have these tariffs with, and I think there's probably a lot of reasons with the EU, but they're all part of the European Union. And, although Canada, United States, and Mexico are three different countries, we're all part of North America. They're our neighbors. It's like taxing your neighbor.
Right. And by the way, who pays the lion's share of the NATO?
The consumer.
I'm sorry?
I was going to say, yeah, because the consumer pays all the ends up paying all the tariffs.
But let's talk about who's protecting NATO's ass from Europe's ass from Russia. The United States is paying the lion's share of the cost of NATO. Mm-hmm. If I was the U.S., I'd say, hey, you want us to keep picking up, 75% of the bill for NATO? How about you drop your tariffs? Otherwise, you can protect your own damn countries.
Yeah.
Think about that for a second. Who pays the lion's share of the cost of NATO? All right. Before we move on to our taxpayer relief shot, which is not from Texas, anything you'd like to add?
I saw a really interesting story on the news, and I wish I should have found the clip when I saw it on the news about there's a high school out there that is putting a lot of emphasis on trade. Basically, these students are, when they graduate high school, they're either graduating with an associate's degree or a certification in a trade. And I think our country has lost sight of that. And I wish I could remember even the name of the high school.
Well, union plumbers these days are making $90,000 a year without a
Oh yeah.
Yeah, diesel mechanics, the same thing. Welders are making $100,000 a year. Electricians are making $90,000 a year.
Nurses, yeah.
Right. And by the way,
And another, I don't know if you saw the news. This is just something I found fascinating. I saw on the news last night. Um, I think it's called a dire wolf. Did you hear the story on the news last night?
They've
Yeah.
from a DNA they've recreated a dire wolf. Yeah,
This is both one of the most fascinating things I've heard, but also one of the scariest things
areas.
I've heard.
Yep, it's like
Because
Jurassic Park all over
it
again.
is literally Jurassic Park comes to real life because they're talking about now the dodo bird and the woolly mammoth.
Yeah, yeah, right. All right, let's move on to our taxpayer relief shot. And for those who haven't heard it before, here's the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida, telling them why we call them taxpayer relief shots.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
And I think we have one of your favorites here, Sheriff Grady Judd, also from Florida, Polk
I
County.
would highly suggest that if a looter breaks into your home, comes into your home while you're there to steal stuff, that you take your gun and you shoot him. You shoot him so that he looks like grated cheese.
All right, and
So both these sheriffs, these are two different sheriffs from two different counties, but both in Florida. And
yeah,
our taxpayer relief shot comes from Florida.
yeah, and our taxpayer relief shot is from Miami. So here we go. They picked on the wrong Domino's pizza delivery driver. Here we go.
Fire outside a Hollywood Domino's pizza restaurant as a delivery driver fights back against two armed crooks. Two masked men confronted that driver.
But when it was over, one man was dead. CBS 4's Gabby Fleischman has been working.
By the way, do you think the second thug stayed around to try and
Nope, I'm guessing he fled.
You don't think he stayed there and tried to give CPR to his buddy?
He's like, I'm out.
Hang on.
As a delivery driver fights back against two armed crooks. Two masked men confronted that driver.
But when it was over, one man was dead. CBS 4's Gabby Fleischman has been working this story since it broke. She joins us live from the scene with the latest on this investigation. Gabby. Lauren and Walter, the tables turned on those two suspected robbers when this pizza delivery man pulled his gun out on them. We're told that one of those suspected robbers was pronounced dead here on the scene. Another one ran away. The employees here at the Domino's tell us they are just completely shaken up by what happened. Just a short time ago, they actually posted a sign on the door letting customers know that the restaurant's closed for the day while police investigate. A car with bullet holes in the window is towed away from the scene where a pizza delivery man reportedly fired a fatal shot in self-defense.
The worker of Domino's, the man shot six times.
Police say just before 1 a.m. Wednesday, two armed men wearing masks ambushed a Domino's employee in the parking lot of the store on Hollywood Boulevard and North 58th Avenue and tried to rob him.
In response to two armed males coming up to him, he reacted and shot at one of the suspects.
According to investigators, the delivery man fired at the would-be robbers, killing one of them. The other ran away. It's not clear if the masked men fired back.
It's horrible. He's out here making an honest buck, and somebody tries to rob him. Fortunately, he was strapped. He was ready to go.
The delivery man and another employee who was at the store closing up for the night were not injured.
She's shaken up at how it happened.
Miguel Nieves says his girlfriend's daughter works at Domino's and was walking out the door when the attack happened. He feels fortunate that her coworker was able to fight back.
Glad he was armed. Glad he was able to protect them. The night could have been worse.
And investigators have pulled video from surveillance cameras out here, and they're interviewing witnesses to figure out if, in fact, this is a case of self-defense. Police also tell us that the suspect that they are looking for, he ran westbound. They don't know at this point if he was wounded or not in the shooting, but again, they are still looking for him. If you have any information, you're asked to call Broward Crime Stoppers. That number is 954-493-TIPS.
All right. So what do you think? Self-defense, obviously, right?
Yeah. And this just happened a couple hours ago. It's still a developing story, but every time we hear about school shootings, the conversation immediately goes, we need stricter laws, gun control. So this afternoon there was actually a stabbing at a prominent high school in a very affluent community in North Jersey, and immediately the conversation went to metal detectors. We need metal detectors.
Yeah.
No one ever talks about if a student stabs another student, and this is an affluent neighborhood. This is not necessarily a gang situation. At least I don't think so. Again, this is a developing story, but I'm guessing this was a mental health situation.
Yeah.
As are most most school shootings.
Yes, they are. And by the way, and despite what you hear, we don't have one school shooting a day. You know, if you define a school shooting where somebody brought a loaded gun into a school during school hours and intentionally fired it at a student or a staff member, you're talking the number of things you can count on one hand. You
Yeah,
know,
I don't think that this was a gang situation.
no, no.
I think this was a mental health
Mental health. Yep.
crisis.
Yep.
And I think, and when you look at all of these shootings, whether it's a school shooting or not a school shooting, that's again taking the gangs out of it. It all comes down to mental health.
Yep. You got that right. All right. All right. Hey, anything else you want to add before we sign off
That's
here?
it.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody who listened to this podcast for giving up 30 minutes out of your busy day to listen to me ramble on about the things I find of interest and importance. And I hope you found them as interesting and important as I did. If you want to see some of the materials and story links, and particularly the videos you heard we played for you today, give producer Susan a couple of days and you'll be able to find them on the Jerzee Joe website at jerzeejoe.com, with Jersey being spelled Jerz as in zebra Jerze, jerzeejoe.com. And if you want to email me with a comment, question, your vote on the stupidest thing I've heard all week or the stupidest criminal or a suggested show topic, you can do that by sending me an email to just joe@jerzeejoe.com. Just remember to spell Jersey with an R, a Z, and two E's. And with that, producer Susan, anything else you want to add before we sign off?
Nope. I'm wondering if we're going to get more snow this season.
Not me. Well, maybe in November, but not now. All right. Talk to you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.